My name's Chris Brown. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director for MARTOR. And what I'd like to do today is walk you through some of the key features of a safety knife and the benefits they bring. Not just the safety, which is sitting there in the title, but issues like protecting product from damage, improving productivity, compliance with regulation, and some of the issues also surrounding change management. So what I'm going to do is walk you through a series of PowerPoints, and at some stage I'm going to go through our particular 3 safety levels of knives so you can understand how we go about what we do. So let me introduce ourselves formally, and then I'll come back shortly and you see me face to face presenting the knives. What I want to talk today about is knife injuries, obviously, but the human and also the financial costs that comes with them. Damaged goods. It is really spectacular, the amount of cost that hides behind the damage that's done to goods by blades and knives used carelessly. I want to talk about knife policy as well. All too often, companies don't have one, and even ones that do, sometimes they're not as adequate as they should be. And productivity. If you give someone the right knife, the right tool for the job, they can do it so much better. And as I said earlier, I'll finish on behaviour change. And a lot of this is wrapped up in trying to make people change the way they do their jobs, the way they think of their work, the way they think of health and safety. Firstly, and I'm going to demonstrate these in a moment, but I just want you to understand that we work with 3 levels of safety. The first one is called Secumax, which is the highest degree of safety, and that's the one on the left there, Secumax 150. What we mean by that is that it's got a narrow aperture, so you cannot get your finger into there and damage your finger. The next level is called SecuPro, professional level of safety, very high degree of safety. Those are auto retractable blades. Whatever you do, once you've activated that blade, it is automatically going to retract. And finally, the SecuNorm technology, which gives a very high degree of safety, which is activated by a thumb slider or equivalent and retracts when you take your thumb off that slider. I'm now going to demonstrate to you in real time how those actually look and work. So as I was saying, we've got our 3 levels of technology. The first one is the Secumax. Here we've got a product where you can't get your finger in, but it will cut product. Take a very simple example like 2-ply cardboard. It'll just cut through it easily like that. This is a aperture of about 6 millimeters, and that's the maximum it can be under GS standards, which are the standards to which safety knives work with regard to this level of technology. This has a changeable head, see it nice and easy to change and to put back. We also have a disposable version such as this. And in fact, in this case, it's one where the customers put their brand name onto it. Again, you can't get your finger in there. It's also got a really good tape slitter on the top. Second level of technology is the one we call SecuPro, and that's where you've got a fully automatic blade retraction. What that means is that when I activate the trigger, you see the blade comes out, and then imagine I'm putting pressure onto it like this, it clicks, and as soon as the pressure comes off, it's finished. So I'm cutting a piece of paper like this, I make my cut, do that, come to the end, and the blade's gone away, and I haven't moved my hand. Fully automatic. Third level of technology, SecuNorm technology. This is where I put my thumb on it and I can activate the blade. Out comes the blade, take my thumb off, and it goes away. This is both a left and a right-hander. Great technology, reliable, quite old, but extremely useful. And finally, one extra that fits into the Secumax, the safety scissors. If I didn't have gloves on here, I still wouldn't be able to cut myself with that. These are not sharp, they're ground flat, and they cross over and they cut, but not your flesh. However, they will cut something like the card, just like this here. So that's the 3 levels of safety. Really important to remember that. We're trying to move people in a journey to the Secumax, where you can't get your finger in, away from a fixed blade knife which has got no features at all. So it's a journey from here, from the SecuNorm, SecuPro to the SecuMax. And what we try to do is help customers to understand, depending on what they're cutting, what level of technology is best for them, bearing in mind the need for productivity, but also for safety. So having explained where we are with our 3 levels of safety, let's turn to what we would call our first blind spot, knife injuries. And whilst it's obvious if you have an injury, it's not a blind spot, the issue is that people don't take knives seriously enough, and they ignore them, they don't consider the impact they can have. And we estimate there's about 1,000 riddors per annum in the UK due to knife injuries. Not only is that a big issue, but if you look at it, a knife injury comes with a big cost. It's calculated about £440 every day lost before a financial claim. And typically, if someone does get injured and makes a claim, you can be looking at £5,000 plus, as well as all the legal fees and the complications that go with that. We also understand, and these are based on German stats, because the UK stats are actually not down to this level of detail, that 58% of all workplace injuries involving manual tools are knives. So it's almost worth repeating that. 58% of all workplace injuries involving manual tools are knives. That's a colossal amount of injury, and that's how it feeds back up to the 1,000 riddles. Wearing gloves helps, of course, and that's why I was wearing them in the display there. As you can see, my hands are only about 5% of my body. And when you're using a knife and you're cutting towards yourself, which you shouldn't be doing, but people do when they're either not trained or they're careless at the end of a night shift or whatever it happens to be, they can easily cut their thigh, they can cut an elbow, they can cut some other part of their body. So for us, knife injuries are obviously something that safety knives are there to avoid. And instead of having the PPE and relying on the PPE, go to the root cause, take out the cut opportunity, and at the same time also wear the gloves as a further backstop. So that's really our blind spot number 1. That's what safety knives stand for. But there's so much more, as I'm going to explain now. And blind spot 2, often people say that safety knives are, how can I put it, odd, difficult to use, tried them before and they didn't work. But actually, the right safety knife can be very, very productive. And what a safety knife, especially when it's well thought through and you've looked at all the requirements of your business, a safety knife can help you to avoid damaging goods. So this picture on the right is a very expensive sofa delivered in London. We've got a picture of this, and that was slashed on delivery when someone was opening the cardboard or the plastic protecting it. And that was a silk embroidered sofa, cost hundreds of pounds to repair. That's one simple example. But it happens all the time. So in a big warehouse, if you're slashing contents and you haven't thought about how long your blade is, it's quite easy for a blade to go right through the box and cut goods inside, be they clothes, can also be in a place which might be cutting pigments. We saw somewhere where pigment of about £3,000 a kilo in a box, but sitting in a plastic bag inside. Knife went through the box and damaged the plastic as well, and there was material everywhere. The other one is scratching goods. If you're opening a box, you're opening delivering to someone's house a bed or mattress, and they manage to either scratch the mattress or even damage the mattress. That's a big cost and a big rework. Ripping open bags, contents spilling out, and so on. So we calculate that when we go and visit a customer, it's part of our risk assessment, 7 out of 10 cases, we can actually pay for the knives just by reducing damage, by taking out a too longer blade or using a concealed knife from the SecuMax technology where you can't actually damage the product. So I think it's worth actually cutting out from the PowerPoint and just quickly showing you about how knives work with reference to product damage, because it's such an important issue. I've already said it's 7 out of 10 sites where we go to and we can reduce product damage and more or less pay for the knives themselves, and sometimes in very short order. Let me give you a very simple example. take a piece of polystyrene like this as a clear example of something to avoid damage. If we were using the Secumax technology and you were cutting something ahead of that, what is touching the polystyrene here is going to be this plastic head. So it goes down there, you can hear it, but it's actually not cutting it. You can imagine that would be perhaps if you're opening packaging on a fridge door, on that sofa, all you're doing is you're having the plastic touch it. That is a really important issue. And if you're also using the same knife to cut through a box, there you are, it's just the plastic head going through. I hope you can see that properly. So that's Secumax technology, which has got the concealed blade, recessed blade, concealed blade. You can't get your finger in, and it's the plastic which is touching the goods. Really, really useful when you're worried about any product damage. Where you need to use a exposed blade, because otherwise the plastic might get in the way, in that case, using a blade like this, great, fantastic. But you do have to be careful that you don't use a blade that is too big for the job. And in this case, if I'm cutting this cardboard, it goes through like this, and you can see over the top, the blade sticking out, and sticking out quite a long way and cutting into the product underneath. To solve that problem, we've actually got another product with a much smaller blade, and it just goes through, you can see it, hopefully you can just see it going through there, through that cardboard and making the cut to the bottom. So there you've got same technology, the fully automatic retraction, long blade, short blade. And that's just a couple of very simple examples of how we can help you to adapt, not just to make it safer, but also to avoid inadvertently damaging products and causing yourself a lot of extra cost, a lot of rework, and all the consequences of that kind of irritating issue happening in a manufacturing or logistics operation. Turning to blind spot number 3, knife policy. So on the right hand side, that image there is a true image taken about 2 years ago, where we were called in to do a risk assessment of the plant, and the health and safety person said, "This is why I brought you in." What had happened was, in that case, that the operation had had a knife cut 6 months or so before. The operations director said, "You have no more knives on this site except for this particular knife." And that particular knife that was issued wasn't fit for purpose. And so for the people to be actually able to do their job, they started to improvise. And you can see they were very creative in their improvisation. And the big problem with that is that the employer is responsible for those, not the employee. You can deal with the employee, but the employer is also responsible if anything happens to someone with that. So for a good knife policy, some of the questions we would ask is, what level of safety are you looking for? Are you looking for a purely concealed blade? Are you looking for an auto retraction or a manual retraction? Have you even thought about that? Do you have a policy about who should get a knife issuing policy? Should it go to everyone? Should it be tethered by some machinery, or what does it happen to be? Have you trained the staff? Have you proved that you've trained the staff? Having done all of those things, and you've got the knife there on the shop floor, have you set a blade change and disposal procedure? So if someone needs to change their blade, how do they do that? And where do they put their old blade? And final point, and it's a really important point, especially with a knife where there's moving parts, do you inspect and monitor the knives and the blades that they're all working well as you would any other piece of machinery? So a whole series of considerations. In fact, you could actually pull together a knife policy document that's 4 or 5 pages long with standard operating procedures built into it. And that's something that we will do if you ask us to come in and do a knife risk assessment. And I think to you as Hayley customers, you should know that working with Hayley, we do offer a free of charge risk assessment. And all you need to do is speak with your Hayley representative and they'll get in touch with us and we'll set it up. Blind spot 4, productivity. Again, going back to the point I was making earlier, that there has been a bit of an urban myth around safety knives, that they are difficult to work with, that they impact on productivity. We can demonstrate the exact opposite, that in fact our knives are optimized for cutting various different materials, from plasterboard to vinyl on the floor, to carpeting, to trimming, to opening boxes, stripping pallets. You name it, we can give a good solution. The other thing we want to do, as well as improving productivity by getting the right knife for the specific job, is making sure that it's comfortable in the hand. So many of our knives have won awards, not because we set out to make them win awards, but because we took it very seriously, that the knife actually fitted well into the hand, that it felt comfortable, that after days working with the knife, you could still have a serviceable hand at the end of the day. Damage and injury reduction, of course, going back to the health and safety issue at the very beginning, but by not having damage and by not having injury reduction, you maintain a very high level of productivity. And in any job, isn't it right that someone has the right tool for the job? When you think of the unit cost of a knife, giving someone the right knife that does the job well and keeps them safe and reduces damage, that is a very, very good investment, and something that pays dividends when it comes to the perceived well-being of the staff, if you like. And the fifth blind spot, behaviour change. What we've got on the right there in the bubble, all things are difficult before they are easy. We actually like that, and we use it quite often when we do a risk assessment, because we keep coming across the crusty individual who's been in the business 10, 20 years, and we say, look, actually, we've got a better way of doing this. This is a safer knife, and actually we think it'll make the job easier and cut better. And they say, no, use it for 10 years, never had a cut. No, I know exactly what I'm doing. You can't improve the job for me. That happens so often. And in fact, one of the reasons we get called to do risk assessments is often because the business understands they need to change, but they cannot find the right tool to persuade people that they should change. So we come in and we're able to say to someone, look, understand what you're saying. Why don't you try this knife? Because we've seen this used in many, many places doing the same job that you're doing, and it works like a dream. And very often you get it in someone's hand and they'll work. We can prove to them that it becomes easier. But that's the kind of thing that we come in and help the health and safety manager, operations manager, just to give him that backing and support him. The other one is passive resistance. What we actually see is if we send samples out, we'll actually go onto a site. We know it's the right sample, or pretty sure from everything we've heard from the description. Then they come back to us, the company come back to us and say, look, we put it there and it doesn't seem to be doing the job you say it will. And that's because if you're using an auto retraction, for example, you can make it auto retract in such a way that it can't do the job because it's automatically retracting. And that's simply because they're using it the wrong way. And often that's because they've got the same attitude. I like my old knife, I don't want to use one. And I think the final point on this slide, fear of reporting incidents, is absolutely huge. And it's really important. If people worry that by reporting a cut, if they worry about reporting damage, that they're going to lose their job or get into trouble, they're not going to report it. And we went onto a huge warehouse site with a lot of temporary workers. And when we went in there, we were told there are no knife cuts. We just need to make sure we've got the right policy in place. My colleague went around the site and started talking to a few people, and someone said, actually, I had a cut recently, but I just put my glove over it. It started to bleed a bit. I went into the toilets and I put a tissue over it and I left it at that. And he said, why on earth do you do that? He says, because I'm on hourly work. I can't afford not to come to work. The issue there for the company is, one, it's disappointing that isn't picked up. But secondly, that's a near miss. That was on the palm of the hand. It could have torn ligaments. It could have done something to an artery. It was a real big near miss. And that's the sort of thing that we can pick up when we go around by trying to speak to as many people as we can understand what they do. So we demonstrate to people, we train them, we can persuade, and we can encourage. So those are the activities that we can do, and we can do it on your site. So thanks for watching. I think it's really worth me just taking this moment to say to you again about the risk assessment. I keep mentioning your risk assessment. For all of you watching this, as long as there's more than 30 users on a site, we will come and do a free of charge risk assessment, which means we'll come to the site. We need to walk around the site and see what people are cutting, see what they're cutting with, and see if we can firstly find a different way for them to do the job. If you can take the knives out completely, all the better. If you still need the knife, we'll try and find the one that is appropriate for you, that is safe and efficient and can improve productivity and it can avoid damage, great. And if we can help you to persuade your staff to use the MARTOR knife, then that would be good for you. Obviously, it'd be good for us, and you should end up with better safety, more productivity, less product damage, and hopefully a happier workplace. Thank you very much for listening. If you've got any questions, please pass them through to Hayley. I'll be more than happy to answer them. Happy to take telephone calls, emails, or even a Zoom chat if that's what you'd like. Thank you very much indeed.